Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of infamous Russian mercenary from force Wagner, has died in a plane crash over the Tver Oblast whilst transitioning from Moscow to St. Petersburg on 23rd of August, whilst the cause of the crash has remained unclear. Though Wagner-associated Telegram channels have claimed Russian air defense systems were responsible for the crash, though there has been no concrete evidence to suggest this, and the cause still remains unknown. Who was Yevgeny Prigozhin? Yevgeny Prigozhin, otherwise known as Putin's chef, was a key figure in Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, head of the Wagner mercenary force, which gained notoriety in Syria, Mali, the Central African Republic, and more. He rose to power initially as a caterer after the fall of the Soviet Union. He quickly became a close ally to President Putin, with his restaurants hosting meetings with foreign leaders and contracts being won for catering at schools and government institutions nationwide. In 2014, it is believed he formed Wagner, providing support to pro-Russian paramilitaries in the group in the Donbass.
What does the Wagner Group do? Wagner Group operations later spread to assist promoting Russian interests globally. Wagner Group has provided and continues to support regimes in Syria, Libya, the Central African Republic, and Mali. Numerous accusations of war crimes, such as murder, torture, and rape, have been made against Wagner operatives in these states. It wasn't until September 2022 when Prigozhin confirmed his involvement in Wagner, stating its formation was to protect against the genocide of Russian people in the Donbass. During the Russian invasion of Ukraine, the group's involvement in promoting Russian interests increased exponentially. Wagner Group's most notable involvement was in the Battle of Bakhmut. It is believed that around 20,000 Wagner fighters were killed in the Battle of Bakhmut, one of the most bloody battles of the war, in which Wagner forces eventually helped to seize the town of the Donetsk Oblast. Tensions between the organization and the Russian Ministry of Defense had been present throughout the war. Prigozhin alleged incompetence in Sergei Shoigu, the Russian Minister of Defense, and other leaders in the Russian military command. Other allegations include insufficient supplies being provided and operations meant to directly disrupt Wagner's operations. Another reason for the group's notoriety included the recruitment of prisoners to fight on the front lines. Prigozhin, who had spent time in prison for robbery, through this he was able to relate to prisoners, which helped increase recruitment as he was allowed into prisons to recruit prisoners, offering decreased sentences if they were willing to fight on the front lines. In a now infamous video, Prigozhin is seen at a penal colony in the Central Mari El Republic, offering a pardon in exchange for 6 months of service. It is believed that Wagner has used these untrained prisoners in human wave-style attacks. What was the Wagner insurrection? These tensions eventually reached new heights on the 23rd of June, 2023. A video was released by Prigozhin alleging that the invasion of Ukraine was based on lies and meant to further the interests of Russian elites. He also accused the Ministry of Defense of deceiving the public, alleging that Shoigu and other elites started it because of personal interests. He also later claimed that the Russian government had conducted missile strikes on Wagner rear bases, resulting in the deaths of 2,000 Wagner fighters. He later called Wagner fighters to arms in an operation against the Russian Ministry of Defense on his Telegram channels. In the early hours of the 24th of June, Wagner forces captured the city of Rostov-on-Don. A city of over 1 million inhabitants, it is extremely important as it hosts the Southern Military District headquarters, a key location for Russian operations in Ukraine. After capturing the city, Wagner forces began moving north towards Moscow along the M4 highway. Prigozhin stayed behind in Rostov-on-Don. The estimated number of fighters that advanced on Moscow that day has various estimates. Russian military bloggers estimate the number to be at 4,000. British intelligence estimated the number to be at around 8,000, and Prigozhin claimed the number to be closer to 25,000. The convoy didn't make an effort to capture any other cities on the way. Clashes occurred between the Russian Air Force and Wagner forces, with the helicopter and Ilyushin 22M airborne command plane shot down. The latter, according to British intelligence, was particularly significant as it was one of 12 of that aircraft types that had proved to be significant to Russian efforts in Ukraine and had so far escaped Ukrainian attempts to shoot down the aircraft. Wagner fighters pushed through Voronezh with 2 missiles believed to be of Wagner origins, striking an oil depot and a courtyard of an apartment. Whilst Wagner forces continued pushing towards Moscow in an effort to stop the advance, highways were dug up, roadways were blocked using trucks and school buses, and defensive lines were set up just south of the city of Moscow on the Oka River by government forces. The closest Wagner visually confirmed to be to Moscow was Krasnoy, 330 kilometers or 210 miles away, though other reports allege that they were as close as 95 kilometers or 59 miles away in Kashira in the Moscow Oblast. Sergei Sobyanin, mayor of Moscow, declared a start to counterterrorism operations in Moscow, with troops and armored vehicles quickly mobilized. The Federal Security Bureau raided the Wagner headquarters in St. Petersburg, with Russian media reporting 4 billion rubles, cash in US dollars, handguns, and gold bars, all allegedly seized during the operation. Prigozhin said that the cash was for salaries of Wagner fighters and compensations for families of fallen fighters. According to anonymous sources in British intelligence, they reported by the Daily Telegraph, Russian intelligence threatened to harm Wagner leaders' families. The insurrection eventually ended after negotiations took place with Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko speaking to Prigozhin on Putin's behalf after a series of failed negotiations. The agreement had Wagner fighters seize their advance and return to their base in exchange for their guaranteed safety. Prigozhin would later go on to state he accepted this settlement to avoid bloodshed, and the purpose of the insurrection was not as a coup, but rather as a march for justice, and wanted to remove the Minister of Defense Sergei Shoigu and Chief of Staff Valery Gerasimov. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov announced all charges against Prigozhin would be dropped and he would leave for Belarus. Wagner forces later withdrew from Rostov-on-Don, and Wagner forces returned to Ukraine. Despite his supposed exile, Prigozhin's jet was reported to have flown between St. Petersburg and Moscow multiple times, with Lukashenko stating Prigozhin was in St. Petersburg and not in Belarus. This was later confirmed as Prigozhin was photographed in a hotel in St. Petersburg shaking hands with the presidential advisor to the Central African Republic, who is in Russia for a meeting of African leaders. Eventual death. On August the 23rd, a plane carrying Prigozhin and Wagner's second-in-command, Dmitry Yevgeny, crashed over the Tver Oblast, north of Moscow, en route from Moscow to St. Petersburg. Initially, their deaths were reported by Russian state-owned media organization, TASS, with the names being listed on the passenger list providing evidence of their deaths. Their deaths were later confirmed on the 27th by the Investigative Committee of Russia after genetic testing on the bodies. Wagner-associated telegram channels quickly reported that Russian air defenses were responsible, but with no visible missile trails and no evidence to support this theory, it is highly unlikely. Western intelligence reported that the cause of the crash was an internal explosion in the plane, though it is likely that we will never know the true cause of the crash because of the secrecy surrounding Prigozhin's final months. An outpour of support came following his death, with memorials set up throughout Russia. Prigozhin was, and still remains, a highly controversial figure throughout Russia. His impact on the modern world, though, is without a doubt sizable.